Welcome back to Financial Minds Meet the Experts. I'm Jamie Agostino, your host. On this show, we're joined by financial industry experts to talk about topics, trends, and themes that credit union professionals need to know about. Today on Financial Minds Meet the Experts, we are discussing employee engagement with Vizo Financial's Chief Culture Officer, Joe Bertotto. Joe, thank you so much for being here. But before we get started, would you mind telling our listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Pleasure to be here. So I am the Chief Culture Officer, obviously, of Vizo. Prior to joining Vizo, though, I've got about 33 years, 34 years of experience working in the field of leadership and organization development. So I've been doing this work for a pretty long time, and also in the end of 2019, published a book called "Pick Up the Gum Wrapper," um, and that really chronicles kind of using strengths and thinking about how you create a workplace where people want to come to work every day versus have to come to work every day.
All right. Yeah, we use Strength Finders here at Vizo Financial, and that's all due to this man right here. All right, let's get started with our questions.
Good.
So, Joe, the term engagement, we use it a lot in business. What does it really mean, employee engagement?
Yeah, I mean, the term was actually popularized by the Gallup organization. It was originally coined by a professor out of Boston University, William Kahn, in 1990. But engagement really is kind of the coming together of performance and attitude. A lot of people get confused and just think it's happiness at work, but there's a whole component of commitment and performance that goes with engagement. So engagement really is, at the end of the day, it's kind of the coming together of commitment and performance, or attitude and performance for a person.
Okay, so then what drives employee engagement?
Yeah. So I think there are a couple things. One of the big ones is people having their needs met. Excuse me, right? Like, there are universal needs that employees have in varying degrees at times of their careers, right? There are things like, the social aspect of work, the having close relationships with people. There's the piece about learning and growth. So, is somebody developing me? Am I getting challenging work opportunities? Um, am I getting feedback on my performance? There's kind of that element of it. There's kind of the basics of just clear expectations, which is a big one, and interesting. Based on some of the research by the Gallup organization, about half the people that come into work every day don't know exactly what's expected of them at work. And that's pretty frightening, right? When you think about it. Excuse me. So, clear expectations, kind of another one. And part of that whole relational piece is really having kind of caring and trusting relationships. Trust is the foundation of relationships. So, do we have a high trust organization is kind of another piece. And then, I think the other point, and you mentioned it when you mentioned Clifton Strengths, is the whole idea of, you know, allowing people to do more of what they're good at and enjoy. A company's real job, if you think about it, is to put people in positions to succeed so they can best serve the member. So the more we think about putting people in those positions to succeed by having them do more of the things they're good at and enjoy, kind of the better. So they're kind of the universal needs. And then there's the individual needs. So, if I have somebody on my team that requires time to kind of research and think things through, and I'm personally not like that, I try to move faster and do a lot of things more intuitively, and I rush that person, that's not putting that person in a position to succeed. It's not really helping that person. Or if there's a person on the team who really needs a tremendous amount of social interaction, and I'm not allowing or providing that, or I'm, as a manager, not promoting that for the person, then that also gets problematic. So, to me, the kind of the biggest thing is, if you can meet people's needs at work, that goes a huge way in driving people's engagement levels.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it really sounds like you really need to invest in truly understanding your team and each of them individually. So thank you.
Yeah.
I'm I'm sure there's barriers. What are the barriers to employee engagement?
Well, you mentioned one when people don't do it, and that is when a manager doesn't individualize, the relationship they have with their employee. One of the key things to keep in mind is based on Gallup's research, 76% of a team's engagement is solely defined by the manager, right? So the manager has a tremendous amount of influence in how committed people are, right? And how they perform and how they feel about work and their attitude. And so when managers don't individualize and really try to meet the person in front of them where they are and meet their needs, that's kind of a huge, huge issue. Um, I think the other thing is being careful about who you put into management roles, right? Because it's a lot about the manager when it comes to engagement. And most credit unions and organizations in general will promote people into management roles for two reasons. They've been there the longest, or they're the most successful in their role, right? It's kind of how it's typically been done. And the difficulty there is not everybody is cut out to be a manager or wants to manage people, but because it's the only path to, greater growth and financial reward, people take on those roles. And so really kind of thinking about the practices in the organization, how we promote managers. Do we give people an opportunity to to grow and be rewarded in a role without having to move them into management? I think is a really big thing. So I think at the end of the day, I think the biggest barrier is a manager who doesn't invest, who doesn't get to know people, and who doesn't individualize. And from a credit union perspective, I think it's a lot about, are we putting the right people in management roles? And if we're not, are we making changes? And life's about fit, right? Work is about fit. If I was in the accounting department, I'd probably be fired within a week because I can't do much beyond basic math. But if I'm in a role where I'm interested and I can grow and somebody will invest in me and it plays to my natural talents and I develop strengths in that role over time, that's a great place for me to be. So it's a lot about fit, right? It's a lot about fit. And I think another barrier is there's thinking, I believe, that everybody can learn everything. And I think people can learn a lot, but the question is, can you learn it well? Can you learn everything well so that you can be excellent at it? Right? Because if we're not going to have people be excellent at what they do, kind of what's the point? So it's really thinking about, how do I recognize that not everybody's going to learn everything, and that's okay. We're not wired as human beings to be great at everything. We're wired to be great at some things. And if you think about a team, the beauty of a team is I have people that can compensate for the things I'm not good at, and I can compensate for some of the things they're not good at. So when you put that together, you have this really powerful unit. But to assume that everybody can learn everything and be really good at it, I think is a mistake. I think it's really, the words you used is a really good one. It's investing in people and getting to know those people and understanding what they're good at and then trying to leverage that. So when we don't do those things, I think they're big barriers and really, really hamper any effort to have a completely engaged workforce.
Yeah, I mean, that totally makes sense. And, it comes down to what's the person passionate about? I mean, if you're passionate about what you're doing and what you're learning,
Mm-hmm.
it just it creates this amazing kind of team environment. Each person has their own strengths, and they're dedicated to that because it's something they enjoy. And even when you're talking about how people learn differently, like You can see that I have 2 kids. You
Right.
really see it
Right.
there,
Yeah,
when you have 2
absolutely.
kids with the same parents and they are
Hmm.
vastly different, and
Yeah.
how you talk to one and teach one is totally different, and their interests are totally different. So I could see why it would be the
Mhm.
same at the workplace.
Mhm. I mean, it's a great point, Jamie. And, from a kid's perspective, I have two kids as well. And one of now my kids are, older, they're adults 33 and 30, but our daughter is definitely a learn by doing, not interested in reading about things. It's a lot about learn by doing. Our son will read endlessly, right? And to your point, it's just a different way to do it. And kudos to you here, Jamie. I mean, you do a great job of all these things that we're talking about as a manager in our company, getting to know people, understanding their interests, trying to position them to succeed, really trying to meet them where they are and help them get their needs met. I mean, you do a great job, and it shows in the team's performance. So kudos to you.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So based on that, obviously we do a lot of, things here at Vizo Financial. So what are some of the things we're doing at Vizo Financial that lead to the high levels of engagement?
Well, I think the biggest thing is we've got a very committed group of leaders, from our CEO, David Bramer, who is completely awesome and participates in everything we do. And he's an active and passionate participant. He just doesn't show up, right? He's always prepared. He participates, and that says a lot, and it sets the tone, right? He's a great model for what we try to do. And all of our managers, our senior leaders, every manager, we're not real hierarchical, but all the managers in our company, I think, really deserve a lot of credit because, you know, I think we try to do the things that you and I are talking about. So from a management perspective, we try to do that. I think some of the things we do, we have kind of a monthly leadership hour where all our leaders in the company come together, and we talk about leadership. And I think that's important, and it's different than most companies who will say, oh, go to this 2-day seminar or this 1-day workshop, and that's it. We talk about leadership every month repeatedly, and those conversations kind of slow down our thinking and focus us on how are we managing. So I think over time, as we just kind of been doing that for a while, and I think that's important because it keeps leadership in the minds of people. So I think that's kind of one thing that we do. We've got a really high care, high performance kind of environment, and I think that when it comes to the care part, we do a lot of things, from our human resource practices of sending a gift card on your birthday, right? Like, who doesn't like that? You know, to some of the events that we put on. I mean, we're remote, so we do these. We call them fun days. The marketing team came up with that acronym of food, unity, and networking. But there are days, because we're remote, where people come together in the office, and many of our teams come in as a team that day, and spend a couple hours in a team meeting along with connecting with all their colleagues. We have different little events through the course of a of a week. We do things like Chat and Chew on a Friday, which is basically a lunchtime game. If you want to join us on video, join, and we play different games. And it's just a way for people to get to see and know each other differently than in work. And we have a lot of those kinds of activities where people come together on Zoom. We're in 4 campuses, and much like our credit unions have different branches and different locations, it's a way for people who might not get to see each other a lot interact with each other in a variety of ways, whether it's a learning opportunity, it's just kind of a fun thing to do, any of those ways, right, that we bring people together to do that, I think gets really helpful. And I think the other thing we do is we have a really robust onboarding program. Um, that Gene Heath deserves a lot of credit for, along with Melanie Lambie in HR, and you know, your team, Jaime, doing a tremendous amount of work on that. Um, and it really kind of indoctrinates people quickly and gets people comfortable in the organization and gets people to know people. I mean, we even go to the length of, setting up meetings with different departments and managers so that the new employee gets to meet a, a large number of people in this company in their first couple weeks on the job. And I think that really sets the tone, right? What starts right ends right. So if we start that off in a good way, I think that's really helpful. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback on that from people. And I think for anybody who just joins us, I think that's really useful, because we've got a pretty long tenured staff. We don't have a lot of turnover. So people know each other and have worked together for a while. So that's an advantage for us. But when we have new people, that onboarding piece is huge. So I think those are some of the things that we do. But I would say primarily it's about the senior team and any organization setting the tone and really being active participants, and then managers at every level managing the right way. I think those are the big keys and they're things that we spend a lot of time on. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there definitely is a commitment from the executive level to employee engagement. And, as Joe said, we do a lot of activities. I love the chat and chew. It's very hard for me to join that, except for when you ask me to sing, Joe. That's the only one I'm not going to do. No, we don't want to torture people that way. So, all right. So, why should credit unions invest resources in employee engagement?
Yeah, it's the question, right? So, when you talk about our organization, the interesting thing is our team, there are three of us, are dedicated to this whole idea of culture and employee engagement. And in the vast majority of organizations, what we do is part of typically the HR function. And it can be, a couple people trying to do all the HR work and this stuff. And what typically happens in my experience is the culture stuff is not urgent, right? It's like hugely important, but it's not urgent. So it gets pushed to the side until, cracks start to happen, right? And then it's okay, let's pay attention to it. But, that might be too late. And so I think we really speak the whole idea of, this is really important. And I think the reason it's important, there's one that's really obvious, and that is if you've ever been a consumer anywhere and you walk in or deal with an organization and you see people that are going through the motions, that are, frustrated because you stopped by or called or chatted or whatever, right? That member experience suffers. So, it's a pretty simple thing, but the one key is if you have a really highly engaged organization, you've got a much better chance of having highly engaged members, because your service levels, the care that you treat people with, a lot of those things are going to be kind of delivered in an excellent manner. So I think that's one thing. Beyond that, though, there's a lot of research around business outcomes. And when you have a highly engaged organizations in that top quartile of highly engaged employees perform tremendously against kind of the rest of those organizations in terms of things like profitability, member loyalty, lower absenteeism, lower turnover, higher retention, right? Higher individual performance. So the reason to invest is really a business reason. Again, I think a lot of people just see this as well, it's just about it making everybody happy. Well, yeah, that's part of it, but there's this whole performance element because, at the end of the day, when you think about it, for most people, when you feel better, you do better, right? So, there's that element, but this is really a lot about how are we driving performance through the commitment and attitude of our people and doing all the things we talked about with positioning people to succeed. So, really, the investment is because your business outcomes are going to be better in the long run. So that would be I think that's really the key.
All right. So before we wrap up, I'm going to ask you one final question. If
Yeah.
you could give one piece of advice to our listeners when it comes to engaging employees, what would it be?
It would be make sure you promote the right people into management and train managers in how to engage their employees and individualize, right? It would be that.
Okay. All right. Well, Joe, thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed hearing from Joe Bertotto today, you must check out his Leadership Book Club. This is where Joe leads a 5-week book club and facilitates discussions pertaining to the club's literature. The book, Pick Up the Gum Wrapper: How to Create Workplace That Increases Performance While Improving Lives. Joe just happens to be the author of this book, which you will walk through 3 proven steps to build a compelling workplace. Registration's open. Just visit Vizo Financial's website, www.vfccu.org, to register for that 5-week book club. In addition, Joe also hosts some leadership workshops, and we have one coming up here soon. And then we do have a few others. So again, you can look at that on our website at www.vfccu.org. All right, with that, thanks for listening, everyone, and have a great day.